It's easy to lose sleep when you're worried about your health insurance plan. But when you have a family counting on you to take care of them, having the right coverage is more important than ever. That's why Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield is here to help. With low to no cost plans for you and your family, so you never go it alone. That's our Anthem. Click to learn more.
Looking for the perfect Halloween costume? Goodwill has everything you need to create a one-of-a-kind look. From superheroes to witches, pirates, and princesses, we've got it all at great prices. Plus, when you shop at Goodwill, you help Coloradans connect with jobs, training, and needed support. Make Goodwill your Halloween destination and bring your costume to life. Visit GoodwillColorado.org for locations and inspiration.
Peter Cetera's biggest fan. That's what's coming up on the Art of Bombing, episode 291.
Dan Bublitz Comedy Productions.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the Art of Bombing podcast. I am the host, Mr. Dan Bublitz Jr., and with me, as always, is my co-producer, co-host, Mr. Josh Shirley. How are you doing on this fine day?
I'm thinking about my grass.
Your grass?
Is
it not that green?
It's growing. I've been planting grass.
Oh,
watering the grass. I'm trying to patch the grass.
The grass.
That's right. I've thought about grass probably 16 times since this episode started.
Wow. I'm thinking about getting rid of all my grass.
Then what?
It. No.
Just roll up some doobie.
Just gonna roll it up and smoke it. I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna just go out to my front lawn. I'm gonna roll up the grass and then smoke it. No.
Somebody told me today that some kinds of grass need to be burnt every few years. So
I believe that.
You're kind of not wrong.
Exactly. Although we are seriously considering doing a xeriscape with our, front yard and trying to get rid of as much lawn as we can. Just cause.
Okay. What would it then be? Rocks or sand or
something?
Like
rocks and like plants, like maybe rose bushes or cactus, things that don't need as much water to grow, that kind of thing. Because where we live, it can be very dry. Yes. And so our lawn, unless you water it all the time, it doesn't look that good anyway. And we don't want to waste water like that.
Yeah.
So
you want to waste water.
No, we don't. Can you believe we're on episode 291? That means we're 9 episodes away from episode 300.
Who's been making these episodes for us? Because we just did episode 220.
It seems like it, doesn't it? It's amazing. And it's funny because I'll talk to people and tell them that I have this podcast, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we've been doing it for almost 7 years," and they're like, "Holy crap, that's amazing!"
Yeah, that's incredible, man. We are closing in on 300. We got to think of something big to do.
We do. We need a big guest. We need a big guest for episode 300.
Listeners ought to be chiming in.
They should.
Go to the Facebook group. Let us know what you want to see on episode 300.
I mean, or if you have a connect with a big comedian, if you're friends with a big comedian that you think would be a great guest for episode 300, hit us up. Yeah, hit us up in the Facebook group or send us an email to theartofbombingpod@gmail.com. Because if connections, that's how a lot of our big guests have been on this podcast. I don't think I've gotten anybody by randomly emailing them and asking them nicely, except for maybe one. I think that's how I got Dusty Slay. But even then, friend of the show Larry Smith kind of let me use his name because he'd worked with him. So even that, I don't think it was a cold email. So usually when I send emails out to comic, I get no response.
Yeah. Well, because they're comics.
Exactly. Because I have started reaching out to some bigger name comics that I thought would be great for episode 300. And yeah. So yeah, like I said, if you have ideas, hit us up in the Facebook group, hit us up at the Gmail, the Art of Bombing Pod at gmail.com. We would love to hear that. Another quick announcement. Yeah, you probably noticed this episode didn't come out on its normal day, which is Tuesday. That's because we're moving it to Wednesday. We're putting it right in the middle of the week. And the reason we're doing that is because now we're going back to weekly episodes. So what that means for the podcast is that we're going to basically go every other week with a regular episode, and in between will be the callbacks episode. So we're still doing callbacks. So this week, we're doing episode 291. Our guest this week is Geoff Gundy. We had a great conversation. We'll talk a little bit more about that before we get in that conversation. But then next week, next Wednesday, Between Bombs callbacks, episode 291 will come out. And then the following week, we'll have a regular episode. So you're smart listeners. You understand what we're saying here. So weekly episodes now. We felt like maybe we were bombarding your podcast feeds with too much content, and we're going to just roll it back a little bit, slow it down.
It's going to
you get
quality over quantity, folks. It's going to be a good time.
It is. That's exactly
this
it.
episode was a good time, wasn't it?
It was a great time. That was a fantastic conversation. He is definitely a fun person to talk to, and it was interesting because he has that background in radio. And as soon as you listen, anybody listening to the episode listens to it, you're gonna know why. Like if you heard how he talks and you're automatically gonna think he should do radio. And if he didn't, you'd be like, why is he not doing radio?
Yeah. Maybe you've heard his voice before. He's been out there, he's been around, and he's got a great bombing story that's not what you've heard before.
Exactly. I got him to tell me something a little different. I took advantage of having somebody that had such a broad background in another field, similar.
Dan knows how to find your most embarrassing moment in life, folks. Look out.
Well, I tell you what, even I wasn't expecting how that embarrassing moment that he was going to tell me, but that was like the perfect story of that it was great. So that's what's coming up in this conversation. You guys you're gonna enjoy it. We're not gonna spoil that because we want you to be just as surprised as we were when he told the story because it was hilarious. Yeah. And we go really in next week when the callbacks comes out. We'll be talking about what you can and can't teach as far as comedy goes, and we talk about what you should look for if you're thinking about comedy classes. So those are a couple things that'll be coming up next week. As far as housekeeping goes, make sure you just follow the podcast wherever you're at. You can leave, reviews. That helps us. Join the Facebook group, start a conversation, send us an email. I don't know, however you want to get involved. That would be great. We would enjoy that. Wouldn't we, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. Who wouldn't enjoy?
Absolutely. We'd enjoy it greatly. Greatly. What if we just did that? We just kept interrupting each other.
What are we doing?
That's just the rest of the intro is just us interrupting each other.
Oh yeah.
All right, we better get in this episode. We're dragging it out. We're dragging this intro. People are like, "Oh, shut up already. Let's just get to the conversation." If they haven't already skipped it. All right, here we go. Here's our conversation with Geoff Gundy. Enjoy.
It's easy to lose sleep when you're worried about your health insurance plan. But when you have a family counting on you to take care of them, having the right coverage is more important than ever. That's why Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield is here to help. With low to no cost plans for you and your family, so you never go it alone. That's our Anthem. Click to learn more.
Hello, Hello from NoCo Humane, your community partner for comprehensive animal welfare services in Larimer and Weld counties. You may not recognize our new name, but we have more than 50 years of experience and expertise, formerly operating as Larimer Humane Society. We have expanded our reach and our impact with a second animal shelter in Weld County, bringing even greater compassionate care and commitment to the pets and people of Northern Colorado. 2 shelters, 1 mission. NoCo Humane. Visit us at nocohumane.org.
And now, it's time for the stand-up soundbite.
At home, I have a wife and 3 teenage daughters. And so I mainly like to come here just to hear my own voice for a change. You know? But I know what's going on. Some of you are listening to my voice going, is this guy really here to do comedy or kick off a 40-minute classic rock block? Hey, I've been a radio DJ for 22 years, and so when I started comedy, I was puffed up, you know? I'm like, this will be easy. I'm already a really good public speaker. No, I was already really good at talking to myself in a padded room. That was it. Yeah. Radio's a big part of my life, you guys. I met my wife through radio. She was caller 5. Yay, a date with a DJ. That's right, Kimberly.
It's the art of bombing. Before we went officially into the record mode, we were talking about keeping it clean on this podcast, and I was like, I would imagine that would be no problem for you because you've done radio for 25, 30 years, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Couple decades.
Are you still doing radio? Or?
Yeah, it's a part-time gig I do from home because the full-time ones are pretty non-existent.
Yeah. So do you like, when you work from home doing that, are you doing like hosting like a show, like a regular DJ? Or are you doing more like voiceover work, like doing ads and stuff like that? Or
I do some ads, but the bulk of what I do is hosting a show. It's an overnight show on active rock format, which is everything from like Black Sabbath and AC/DC up to like, Five Finger Death Punch and nothing more, and like the newer stuff as well.
Yeah. All right. That's cool. Because you also said that, before you made the comment about people who tend to have jobs in radio or in front of a mic a lot where they can't swear tend to curse a lot more when they're not on the mic. And I would agree with that because I not that I'm in radio, but I've been, I'm more of a clean comedian. That's how, and I didn't just set out to do that. That's just how I evolved. And I always joke, I'm like, if you want to censor me, put a mic in front of me, because otherwise,
yeah, I don't want to lose my job, but otherwise, bleep.
Exactly. Outside of comedy, I'm the worst when it comes to swearing.
Hey, a person can only take so much. It's therapeutic.
It is.
If you injure yourself, it's been proven to help you not feel so much pain. I mean, there's something good there.
My favorite word is fuck. I'll just say it. I know we're keeping it clean. We just won't get too into
right
it.
Right after he tells me, we try and keep it clean, but yeah.
Just one curse word. I
have a way of bringing that out of folks.
Yeah, I believe it. But that's like I said, that's my favorite one, and I use it in all kinds of variations. So outside of comedy, I use that word way more than I should.
It's a good one. It's aged well. Fuck. There's lots of curse words that just anymore. Some of them are just straight up offensive. There's another,
Well, since you come from radio, I know you're, because you have to follow FCC rules or whatever because you're live. But what are if for TV, is it kind of the same? How would you what takes a show from being PG-13 to R? How many fucks do we have?
Zero.
We're out.
Zero tolerance. That's 10. Well, one fuck is $10,000 fine from the FCC if somebody reports you. And usually if they do report you, it's the competing radio station. But I have seen it happen.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely a good reason not to swear.
Yeah. Yeah. But the rules are all over the place, like Howard Stern and the satellite folks can say whatever they want because
they're
different.
On satellite. It's different rules.
That's
right?
exactly it. The whole thing is ridiculous.
It really
I mean, you've been able to curse on daytime TV since the 80s. And here we're 2023 radio. Probably shouldn't even say ass, Just play more songs about drugs and suicide.
Yeah, right. Not wrong there. That's pretty funny.
Yeah,
that's going to be an interesting aspect, though. I mean, and I suppose going from having that background doing radio, because along with radio, I'm sure you have to read ads, you have to do ad reads, you have to do create ads and do all the stuff I'm sure you've done over the years being in radio. So in a sense, you're performing. There's a lot of performance behind in that. Were you able to take that, kind of what you learned and start applying it to comedy when you started doing comedy?
Yeah. And I've only been doing stand-up comedy nonstop for about 2.5 years now, even though I've not passed up a chance to do it since 2009. It's just been very sparse that I've been able to get in and do it. But I do like to think that my radio experience and emceeing and just writing, I've always tried to create radio bits or just write jokes on my own that I file away somewhere, that it all adds up into something, and I'm not just starting from, square one in March of 2020 when I got into this, like all the way. So I would say
March of 2020 is when you decided to get into this all the way, huh?
An online class was on sale. And I had no excuses. I took a Judy Carter class, and they answered the questions and problems I had, and
I was just going to say, I wonder why the comedy class was on sale.
I have no idea. That's so weird, isn't it?
So you actually took Judy Carter's comedy class.
Mm-hmm.
That is interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because I've had people, everybody that's in comedy, I think, at some point, unless they're super new, is aware of the Comedy Bible, which is, that how-to comedy book that she wrote and continues to do new revisions, I think, pretty regularly. Mm-hmm. So I definitely, encountered plenty of comics who have known about the book, but I didn't realize, I should know that she did a comedy class, but I don't think I've ever encountered anybody that took her class specifically.
Yeah, she's had an influence on quite a few folks. One of the main comedy classes you can take in Denver right now is through Rise Comedy. Mm-hmm. And Christy Buckley, who teaches that, bases a lot of her teachings off of the Comedy Bible. For example, just, premise ABC, like such and such is weird, hard, scary, or stupid. Like, start with those 4 emotion sort of words, because da-da-da-da-da, and then hopefully you get into it and people can't, see the nuts and bolts of that, after a while.
But, absolutely.
But, and then she takes it her own direction, Christy does. But, Judy has been influential on a lot of other instructors. Dean Lewis.
I believe that, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So, it really helped me. I mean, there were things about the dynamics of the open mic, because like a lot of comedians, I'm a really sensitive puke. And, it's like...
You definitely can't be sensitive if you're going to an open mic.
For sure. It's hard not to be. It'll take it out of you. Yeah. It'll make you or break you. But my thing is, for almost anybody I know, I like this. I like interacting. I like, wearing everything on your sleeve. And unfortunately, you get a bunch of egos who are sensitive about their own work in a room. Yep. It just ain't going to be that way. And that class helped me realize why and just sort of how I fall into that. Because so much of it is it me? And a lot of times I'm sure it is. But, I've come to realize that we're all a lot more the same. I'm not as unique as I thought. Hopefully my material is, but not so much my attitude and what I experience. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, when you have so many people, it's easy to kind of all be the same. You know what I mean? When you're bound to be very similar to other people because we're people. We're similar to everybody. Even though we might be unique in some small way, the end of the day, we're pretty much all the same, you know.
True story.
We just come from, different backgrounds, so on and so forth. Now, I'm curious because, this is the art of bombing, and I'm sure you got some stories for comedy, but I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm curious, have you ever felt like you bombed as a radio DJ, or hosting an event or something?
Oh, buddy. How much time do we have?
Unfortunately...
Only some, because you have to get to something else, but we
True.
still have plenty of time.
Kids school event.
Gotta go
come
be
first.
you gotta go be a dad, which is very important.
It's not comedy 24/7, but close. Okay, I'm just gonna go for the biggie here. And I am working on, this is one of my first story jokes that I cannot wait to get out there. But I interviewed Peter Cetera from the band Chicago once. I've interviewed, lots of great artists and things, and there's been some that have gone better than others, of course. But this particular time, I had just seen Chicago play at Red Rocks. I think it was 2012. And now Peter Cetera is just coming doing a solo act at this local theater in Cheyenne. And of course, I was still buzzing from the Chicago show. We were probably like row 50 or something. We weren't like close. And, full horn section, as Chicago's known for and all this, they blew it out of the water. Peter Cetera, man, I couldn't have mistaken him for, anything. It was the orange hair and that voice. He was hitting all the notes. Well, I found out during this interview that wasn't Peter Cetera. He left the band in 1985.
Oh my God.
Sometimes you don't ask questions because you know. I mean, I wasn't an avid Chicago listener. I was more of a metalhead, and I listened to some deep cut classic rock, and the guy had no sense of humor about it at all. I mean, he was
blatantly upset.
Deeply offended. It happened right at the top of the interview. And, because it went like this. I'm like, man, I just saw Chicago at Red Rocks, and you guys were amazing, and it just got quiet. And the promoter for the show was in the room too, and even he's like, oh boy, kind of just looks down, and I'm thinking, what the? And right away, I'm like, that's the only thing it could be. I mistook that, and so 1985 to 2012. I had a little bit of time to.
So you weren't a Chicago fan.
Not as much as I thought I was, apparently. I was a born-again Chicago fan. Let's put it that way. I've listened to him more since. I've learned a lot about him since.
Oh, that's hilarious. Wow, that's incredible.
Every question that I answered after that, because, what do you do? The guy didn't hang up on me. He was on the phone. Thank God. He probably would have punched me or whatever. Would have been ugly. But no, he was still on the phone. So I'm like, all right, so you're coming to the Lincoln Center on this day. And I asked such and such question. And he just, everything. Like, the dude was so, I bet he's still pissed about it.
He probably is.
And looking back, I think he kind of needed that as much as I did.
It was a valuable lesson. Yeah. He needed to have his ego bursted, and so did you. You needed to learn about bombing because it was going to get you ready for comedy.
It was unbelievable, Dan. I mean, this wasn't like my second or third year in radio. I was the freaking operations manager. I was the morning guy.
You were all the things that...
I was the one who shouldn't do that out of everybody, but...
and apparently, whoever did your research didn't do very good research.
Yeah, I fired that person right away. Me?
Yeah. Oh, wow, that's amazing. That's a great bombing story for radio. Because it's so hard to, what do you do? You're in the interview, you have to just keep going. I mean, which is similar to comedy. When you start bombing, you got to keep going.
You're still up there.
You're still up there, yep. You still got to fulfill your time, but yeah. But at least with comedy, when you have to fulfill your time, but you're not, at some point you just give up on the audience to do their part because, they've made that opinion or whatever. But with an interview like that, you need something from the other person. And if they're done...
That's it. I don't know why he didn't hang up. I guess he just wanted to see himself if there was any way we can pull this off. And he was increasingly rerunning this through his head again and again.
I'll tell you why. It's because he wanted to make sure your listeners knew what was going on so that they would then come see him and not think that they just saw him.
So they would know for fact that they weren't going to see a full Chicago show.
Exactly. He wanted to make sure that was clear to sell some tickets.
Needless to say or not, that interview never did make the airwaves. So we promoted the show just, on our own afterwards.
Oh, that's funny.
So,
you were just like, you know what?
we don't need to put this out there.
Oh, I've seen plenty of people try, including myself, try and do a live interview, and that just always runs way off the tracks.
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
like, give
Yep.
people what they want, shut the hell up and play a song, you know?
Exactly. I have a good friend of mine who I've known since high school. We went to school together, a couple years older than me, but he's been in radio his entire life. He owns his own radio station in Sioux Falls, and a lot of times he does that. That's what he does, is pre-recorded interviews, which is great, because then if you mess something up, he's like, don't worry, just we'll scratch that, start over. And then that way he can cut it all up to however he needs to, and you know, sounds live, but doesn't have to be live.
It goes back to that thing where you can't curse on the air. Never, when you have a guest, go live. Ever. Not even a simple song request, especially not those. You know, hey, play some MF and bleep bleep. You know, whatever.
Yeah.
Oops. Yeah, everything's.
And then suddenly you're out of money and a job.
Exactly. I just never thought that it would be because of me rather than the other person.
Right?
Surprise.
That's true. That's a good point, because you end up getting fired and having to pay a big fine because you let somebody else on the radio.
Yeah.
Oh, that could be very horrific. But all right, well, let's get back into comedy, because now we got a little bit of background on your radio, your early comedy stylings and such, and where you kind of come from. So I'd love to hear a story of a time you bombed in comedy.
Well, I know that you prefer not to hear about open mic bombs because, as you put it, that's sort of what open mics are for. Like, if you're going to bomb, get it all out there. I really, so far, I am such an over-preparer, if anything, when it comes to showcases. The only times that I've had a showcase that hasn't gone really well has been at Aeneas Herrera's garage parties.
Oh, really?
And I suspect that it had something to do with, well, maybe I was having off nights, of course, but the audience is much younger than anybody I've ever dealt with as an audience. I mean, I have teenage daughters, and so it's not like I can't relate to basically all ages, but there's just some sort of disconnect going on there.
Yeah.
With some of the things that I'm bringing up or how I'm addressing it. I'm hoping to come in as like the cool, like your friend's cool dad or, uncle or something like that. Not like, let me tell you, or any of that horrific garbage, and these people are out to have fun. But it was real hit or miss, to say the least. I mean, it was an overall bomb, but there were just plenty. Like, usually by the time I'm out at a showcase, like, I know that every line is going to hit, or at least get some at the least. So that's what I've had for bombing. I had a really embarrassing bomb at a Comedy Fort open mic a couple of months into this 2.5 year tenure, where I was trying to imitate my racist cousin who lives in Nebraska.
Oh, God.
And apparently I took the rant way too far and long to where, because she drives me nuts. She just drives me absolutely crazy with the stuff she says. I mean, it's hard to not even go into it right now. I'm not going to, but I suspect that maybe I went in so far on that the audience started to feel sorry for her. Even though she was kind of the piece of crap of the story, as much as I love my cousin. So yeah, I left to a quiet stage that night, and I hope that never happens again. Like Luke Gaston seriously had to be like, "Come on, you can clap for him, Geoff Gundy." I've never heard him say that about anybody else. I actually messaged him afterwards. I'm like, "So that didn't go as planned." He goes, "Yeah, it's really hard to make racism funny."
Yeah,
like, yeah, when you're a white guy.
Well, especially, I was just gonna say, I don't. There might have been part of it where you went so far that they started feeling bad for your cousin, but it also probably part of it's probably because you're a white guy. And that's it. It's harder to get away, with, not even get away with, but talk about them topics. You have to be very delicate in how you're presenting it and talking about it. And it, and it's not easy, especially there's comics that have been doing it 20, 30 years and still can't delicately do that.
Yeah, well, that might even be harder because the rules have tightened up a lot.
Well, there's that too.
Is far from a bad thing. I mean, we're addressing a lot of things in our society that people have just always overlooked, I guess. Or
absolutely.
Accepted. So,
well,
I'm right on board.
I don't know that so much that they accepted it, they've always accepted it, and now they're not, so much as is that there wasn't a way for them to complain or share their voice. Now with social media and the fact that things can just rapidly get out there, people's voices now can be heard. You know what I mean? Like 20 years ago, well, I guess now 30 we'll have to say, because 20 years ago we're almost going 20 years of social media. Makes me feel old. Anyway, we'll go back 30 years before social media, even 40 years. If somebody had a complaint, what are they going to do? Tell some friends, rant it out, but
it stays in your living room.
But it stays, yeah, exactly. It's not like now if you go to a comedy show and somebody offends you, or they, or they're just offensive, whatever, and they say something really, bad, then you can put it on the internet, and then news people will see this, and then maybe they pick it up, and the next thing you know, somebody's about to be canceled.
Good point. Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest difference. I don't think people were getting a pass because we just accepted it. I think they were getting a pass because there was no way to really.
There was privacy.
There's more privacy.
And with
That's
social
exactly
media,
it.
one of the things, I know we're basically done with the radio thing, but what was really unique about what I used to do is I had a microphone, and there were times when that was intimidating to almost a crippling degree, and other times it was the biggest high, like I died and gone to heaven. And since social media, everybody has a microphone.
Yeah.
And so many shouldn't.
Yep. I agree.
It's a good thing and a bad thing.
Oh, it really is. There's definitely some pros and cons to social media, and we could do a whole nother podcast series just on that.
Oh, yeah.
And it's definitely, same, even, there's a lot of pros and cons with social media, just in entertainment, because of social media, especially now, there's a lot of comedians that are finding their audiences and getting to, not necessarily get, rocket launched into the limelight or, spotlight, but they're getting there faster. They're able to avoid gatekeepers and like industry people and like do comedy and stuff on their own terms. So that's definitely a pro of it. But on the other side, if everybody's watching, so if you do one bad thing, even by mistake, could end up costing you all that. So,
everything.
Yeah. So definitely got to be diligent with all that.
Truth.
Yeah. But I can relate, going back to your story about the garage show and not necessarily being relatable to a younger audience, because that's how I feel. Like, I've figured out my audience is my age plus or minus 10 years. If I go past that either direction, I feel like I my references or some of my jokes just don't land as well because they don't get all the references, because I do jokes about nerdy things, I'm a nerd and I talk about nerdy things and I forget. Sometimes younger audiences don't know the nerdy things that I'm talking about.
That's right. Especially the references, names from anything. I brought up the Brady Bunch to a comedian in his 20s a while back. And I told him I've always been wanting to do this joke where it's like, I want to be the dad that Mike Brady was, except for where he died of colon cancer. We can leave that part out. And I'm glad that at least got a chuckle. It's the first time I've said it outside of my house.
Probably helps that I know the Brady Bunch.
Exactly. This person had no idea what I was talking about. Like, wow. Aren't there reruns still on? I don't know. Maybe not. What decade is it?
There probably are reruns, but younger people aren't watching reruns on TV. They're streaming everything. So unless it would get really, promoted by a streaming platform, they're not going to see it.
It's playing at the retirement home. I get it.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. It's interesting though how that works. Like you said, if you can lose an audience, because they're not in your generation. But comedy should be universal, and it's a matter of getting to that point.
Right. It's making the connection, I think, with any age, and that's a challenge that I've really put myself under, because I've had friends of all ages my whole life. When I was 6, my best friend was a 76-year-old neighbor guy and his wife, and then the inverse. I don't just have kids. Like, we're all tight. We're best friends. We joke around together, and it's gone back and forth with numerous relationships my whole life where I have friends more than 20 years this way or that way. And I just feel like I should be able to make that connection. So the references, that's a big thing. And talking about being a parent to people in their 20s who aren't yet, maybe don't want to be, then it's like, okay, how am I going to approach, hey, here's what it's like, maybe you should be glad you're not, because here's what I went through today. And then the whole radio thing. Like, I think most of them are like, people still listen to the radio? Well,
not a lot. That's
not
why
really.
I'm part-time.
Yeah, not too many people work in it, not too many people listen to it, but here's what it was like. You know what? Never freaking mind.
You just ruined my day. Thanks. Raining on my parade.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I could definitely see that. Well, I mean, it's just like, things evolve. Like, even like with radio, like you said, a lot of people don't necessarily listen to it, and the industry has started to kind of go down, but that's because a lot of those people, the internet, started, gave the platform for podcasting, and that became really popular. And it's become popular because now every radio, conglomerate, because most radio stations have a parent company or whatever, are creating their own apps to get streaming apps to try to get people to listen to the radio shows or listen to their content on that app.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of evolving. And it's also great too, like with streaming, same thing. Cable. I'm sure some people have cable, but a lot of people have gotten rid of cable because you have all these streaming options, and it's way more convenient to just like watch a show at your own convenience
Absolutely.
than have to be there.
Yeah,
for when it comes on, or you don't get to watch it ever.
Yeah, that's just it. $6 a month for whatever channel is your favorite, and none of the $70 stuff for 24/7 infomercials and Bonanza.
Yeah, well, but even like when we were kids, like if you had a show you liked, and if you didn't come from a family that had a VCR, to where you could have to set it to record, but you had to watch the show then or there. Then it was done.
That's right.
They didn't do reruns.
You planned around it.
You planned around it.
Be home from so-and-so's house. We're done playing right before 6. And
I'm going to go home, get supper, and at 7 o'clock, I'm watching my show,
Yep, that's it.
Oh, although sometimes I wonder if that would be cool to have that again, because it builds the anticipation for that stuff.
I'd take it. I miss HBO stand-up, man. Just turn it on. HBO, One Night Stand.
Welcome
Boom.
to two old guys complaining about the world.
There we go. Get off my lawn.
Shake some sticks here. So it sounds like you've taken multiple comedy classes. Is that true? Okay.
Yeah. I come from a school of thought that if there's somebody who knows more than me, and especially if I feel like it would have been nice to get into the game a bit sooner, why not go get what they know and skip some steps? And I know there's another school of thought that, it's an art, not a science. It can't be taught and all that. I think it's both and. I think it's what you make of it.
Combination of it. There's definitely art there, but there's a lot of science, because there's a psychology to doing comedy. There's a lot of like technical things that you can learn through, like a class and stuff, things like that. So I definitely think it's a combo. Yeah, for sure.
For sure. I think at the end of the day, you take what you want and leave the rest, as they say in the 12-step programs, because it's going to apply to all of us differently.
Yep.
There's definitely by-the-book followers who are going to do everything to a T, and I feel that you're probably not going to have as much fun that way. I think you need to take it and twist it. In fact, going back to Judy Carter's book at the end, it surprised me when I got to that last page and she said, okay, now you know all the rules of writing comedy. Now go break them.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like,
yeah,
what?
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, and even to that same book, somebody recommended that book to me. And I think by this time I was like 3 to 5 years in. And I opened that book up and I was like, oh yeah, this is not going to help me at all. I already know all this because I've been doing it a while and learning already. But I can also see, though, if you're brand new and you've never done stand-up or maybe you did one open mic and you want to learn to write a joke and the structure and all that book is great. It just depends on where you're at, where you're in your career or, or your journey and what you're trying to get from it, That's and I, like I said, for me, I didn't find it useful, but I've also read other books that I did find very useful.
Okay.
Even since then, So it's, again, like you said, you make a good point. It's about taking what you want out of it and leaving the rest.
Yeah, exactly. Do you recall any specific books that you read that were helpful?
Oh yeah,
to you?
Mastering Stand-Up is a really good book.
Yeah.
Steve, is it Rosenthal?
Oh,
or Rosenthal
or Rosenblum?
Oh, it's Rosen something. I don't know.
Rosen.
Yeah, it's
Back to the Fletch movie, back to the 80s.
It's
Dr. Rosen.
Oh, my
There's an old reference for you.
My eyes are terrible, and I can't see the book. I have it
all right,
right
man.
down there, right next to in the comedy studio.
Right next to a Jim Carrey book.
Yes.
I'm going to have to raid your bookshelf when we're
And
done here.
Louis Anderson, and yeah.
He was one of my favorites. He was one of my biggest influences. When I was 12, his first comedy hour changed my life.
Yeah, he was fantastic. I was very fortunate that I got to interview him for this podcast before he passed away. He did an episode of The Art of Bombing, so that was really cool. So it was awesome to have him on and get to talk to him and hear some of his incredible stories. It was pretty amazing.
I will have to check that out. I'm sure it was.
Yeah, episode 200. I know
200.
exactly. Yeah, I know exactly what episode it was.
Yeah, I met him. Well, technically, that was my first comedy training that I took in 2009 because I wanted to be as close to comedy as I could, given my busy dad schedule and driving every morning to Cheyenne to do a morning show. It was just out of the question to do open mics and stuff. But I had a deal with Comedy Works where I traded tickets, and I would just have a featured Funny Friday comedian every Friday, free tickets. Well, Louis Anderson teamed up with another comedian, Kyle Cease, who I haven't heard much from since back then. I think he's gone more in like the motivational speaking direction or something. Anyway, he was hilarious and super kind, but they put together stand-up boot camp. And that was like $1,000 package or something. And they gave it to me for free. I went to a Louis Anderson, Kyle Cease show at Comedy Works South, but still, man, my face hurt for days afterwards.
Oh, that's
from laughing
amazing.
so hard. And yeah, I went back that weekend, and Kyle Cease just started the whole thing off. The first thing you need to do if you're going to be successful at comedy or anything is get all the negative influences, all the toxic people out of your life. And at that time,
That's really good advice.
there's so many people who overlook that. And I've had
absolutely.
to thin the herd numerous times growing up in toxic atmospheres. And at that particular time, I was working in a very negative surrounding, and it took me a couple years, but I took that guy's advice, and it was one of the best things I ever did for myself.
So when you were doing radio, when you first got out here, you were doing radio in Cheyenne, but you were living in Fort Collins. Is that?
Yeah. I tried to be, sensible and move up to Cheyenne and avoid a 500-mile-a-week commute, but the rent was more expensive.
Really?
They didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, that surprises me because I would have thought the other way around.
They are so proud of themselves up there, and they hate Colorado so much that they will do anything they can to stand up and go, "We're better than you," even though all your workers come up here and keep everything running. I love you, Cheyenne. I still love to go up there and see my friends. And,
Oh yeah, Cheyenne's great. I just didn't realize that. I would have thought it was the other way around. I really would have.
Well, anybody. Well, I sure did, and that was even. Oh, another thing. I had cats, so and no place wanted me to have cats.
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm like, all right, the commute it is, man, and yeah, it ended up being Wellington to Cheyenne, which actually was pretty relaxing, and we bought our first house, my wife and me, and it was 300 miles, now 300 only a week, and just set the cruise for 30 minutes straight, check out some shooting stars, and go play some tunes and do some jokes.
Nice. Very, very therapeutic. Well, let's get back into this. Let's talk a little bit. You talked about your bombing experiences. What do you try to do, like when you have those experiences, to try to analyze and then put that into action so you don't make those same mistakes again, or you prevent that situation from happening again?
So you're talking about afterwards, not so much in the moment.
Yeah, well, I mean, even in the moment. I mean, if that's another question that I usually ask coming up. So it's kind of both. So
Okay,
it's
both.
after the fact and then.
Well, I will use last night's open mic as an example. Last night, I went up second to last at the Comedy Fort, and there were, I'd be surprised if there were more than 10 people in the audience. I'm sure that you've been there, and, people they've sat through 30 comics. And
Oh, yeah.
I think the only reason they're still there is because their butts are asleep. I'm really, but I'm glad they are. And
Well, the fact that there's even 10 people at an open mic is amazing.
after 2 hours, especially.
Yeah. Well, even at a beginning of a show.
The ones I've hosted for sure, and others, true. But I, in the past, have been able to, keep them going and everything, even win them back if they kind of nodded off earlier in the night and stuff. But last night, I had some stuff I was so excited about doing. and it just wasn't landing. Like I screwed up.
It's always the worst.
Oh yeah, and it was my first punchline out of all the ones I had. Like I had tons in this 3 minutes, and I think like they kind of chuckled at that, and I think the rest of the set they're going, what the hell did that mean? Because I used the wrong word. I screwed up. It just didn't make sense what I said. And, I'm a little lethargic after standing around for a couple hours, I suppose. I don't know. But, and it just happens. But I just tried to ramble with him. I'm like, I don't remember exactly what I threw at him because it wasn't working. Like, if something had worked, I'd be able to tell you what I said. But in retrospect, and I had to resolve this with myself before I could go to sleep last night, I'm like, okay, I think what really happened was that I brought an early night full room energy to the stage, and it was late night empty room because I was so excited to do these jokes, and I didn't want to ramble with them. I had a tight 3, like a lot of times I do. I just want to, what I should have done was cut one of my 3 long jokes that I brought and just relax, meet them where they are somehow. And my ego refused to do that last night. And I think that's what happened. Mm-hmm. So next time that comes around, that it's that situation, end of the night, yada, yada, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to, God, I don't want to cut this joke. Damn it. I wanted to do this so bad, but it's going to go better if I do. Mm-hmm. Just keep the other ones and be with them. Have a conversation. I still forget that sometimes. It's a two-way street.
That's an easy one to forget. It really is.
Yeah.
So especially at an open mic when you got and you're excited to tell a new joke and see how it lands, or what, so you forget about that. You're just like, I just want to tell this joke. I want to do all this new material. I gotta get it out, and you get excited, and then you're like, oh, but I should probably act like, at least perform too,
Yeah, right.
Be there, be with them,
be in the moment. I have about 14 different jokes about my wife's breasts that are really fun right now, and it really did well last week in front of people who I didn't even think listened to my stuff, let alone whatever liked my stuff. And last night, everybody just looking at me through it all. So I think that's what it was. It had to be the same jokes. I mean, I added a few tags in there I was excited about, but in retrospect, that's what it was. But yeah, going back to in the moment, just break away. Like, I like how, and I'm just going to use one example that comes to mind. There's many comics who do this well. Luke Gaston. I feel like that dude never bombs, even if none of his punchlines work. And there's so much to be learned from that because he acknowledges it immediately. Mm-hmm. And what's funny is the way he acknowledges it. Oh, look, looks like somebody's driving by in a neon car. Huh, that's fun. Just some random off thing that wasn't part of his stuff. And it's funny because he's trying to dig himself out of a hole, and everybody loves him. And it really doesn't matter that his punchline didn't work or whatnot. Mm-hmm. And Peter Goebel, and he's about as far into comedy as I am, if even. And he really works hard at that, like being in the moment and kind of thinking off the cuff and things. And it tends to work pretty well, quite a bit for him. So that's something I'm trying to go for. I think if you have that attitude that it just isn't life or death, then you never really have to bomb.
Mm-hmm. That's a good perspective. But I mean, I would disagree. You still have to bomb because that's that's how you're going to get better.
Oh, well, yeah. I think that is getting better. I think we're on the same track, actually. Like, okay, this joke bombed. How do I get out of it?
Absolutely.
Get some damn laughs before you leave the stage.
You got to have some awareness there.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's got to be some awareness there because I've seen comics who get to that point where even when they're bombing, they don't think they're bombing, and and that's where you have to be able to acknowledge that, hey, I am bombing, but like you said, being able to acknowledge it and then move away from it is key.
I don't know how anybody could fail to acknowledge that they're bombing. There is nothing louder on this planet than the silence in a comedy room after a punchline. But I know people do. I guess the ego is just it's a big monster.
It's wild. Now, with your comedy classes, have you learned, like, as far as like the writing side of things go, has that given you more of a structure? Like, what's your writing process like? And would you say your writing structure or your writing process is due to any of the classes you've taken?
Absolutely. I am a type A sort of person who I like systems and kind of protocols, and here's how this is going to go. Like you explained to me how the podcast to go before this, and I'm like, okay, good. Got me comfortable, you know? And that way I feel like I can fly more off the cuff from there. So it has an ironic outcome, you know, where you don't seem so scripted. And with the formulas and the different tactics and things that you learn, everything from the comedy books to the classes, I love those. They give me a starting point, because a short while in, you do realize that you don't have to say it just like this. It doesn't have to follow this, but there does need to be a setup in there somewhere and how you feel about it, and then a big surprise, which is where the laugh comes in. And that's the challenge. I mean, I'm not by any means saying that's easy. Sometimes it is, but most of the time not. So the process for me, I try and write every day, because if I write for at least 20 minutes every day, regardless of how successful I am, regardless of if I even finish a joke in that 20 minutes or whatever, at least the wheels are turning. And then when I come back to write, or I'm even at an open mic chatting with other comics and we're joking around, I kind of come up with stuff a little quicker. It's just like any muscle, you know, if you're using it, then it's ready. And so that writing process, I just start with things that come up throughout the day. I tend to text them to myself, just the general idea, you know, just, it's weird. What was the thing? Oh, my daughter, her birthday is this weekend, and she wants a tortilla blanket, which I didn't know existed.
Was a thing.
Yeah, it's just a big round blanket that's off-white and has brown spots all over it.
So you can roll yourself up and look like a burrito, right?
Well, in the picture on Amazon where the person was rolled up under the tortilla, it didn't look like a tortilla with it all garbled up. It kind of looked like some dirty toilet paper. And so I'm thinking, let's just give her mom's and my quilt and call it good. No. Yeah, that's just what I'm working on. Maybe it won't even go out there, but I'll text that.
Just based on what you just did, you got to think of a better punchline than the quilt, because you got a bigger laugh at it looks like dirty toilet paper.
You can kind of see where it's going there.
Yeah. So because that was your big laugh on that. Mm-hmm. So
I may not have said it the same to my wife last night after I'd had a few shots of gin, but it was a hit in the kitchen. Like,
there's definitely legs, though. There's definitely legs. Yeah. So when you are writing, though, like you said, you text yourself. Do you actually sit down though and like write, or you work it in your head, or how does that work for you?
I use Microsoft Word. So
you type it out.
Yeah, it's the most convenient to me. I'm a pretty good typer.
So word for word.
Yeah, absolutely. All the way down to, in parentheses, AO for act out, Dan says this, and things like that. So I have, folders of jokes in progress, and I have them categorized by ones that I want to workshop with people, because I workshop with folks online every week. And I have ones that I just punched up and I'm ready to take out next. And I've got all these current ones that when I have showcases or something bigger, I can take out too. So, and then there's, of course, kind of I don't want to say junk pile, but like this heave, like ones I don't know what to do with, but I wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're just kind of on the shelf until you figure something out.
On the shelf. There you go. Yeah. So that's really it. You can't substitute writing with a pen, but man, it just takes me so much longer.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't write, so I wouldn't know. Everything's in my brain.
Really?
Yeah.
Nothing taken down, huh?
No. Sometimes, like before a show, I'll write out a set list, but I very seldom write out a whole joke or even a note. Once in a while, I will put a note in my phone if I think of a premise and I just can't work it out. But I'm easily distracted. My brain is easy to wander. So if I'm driving, I'm probably not paying enough attention to the road because I'm in my head working out a joke.
Fair enough.
I mean, it's probably not safe, but
details,
right? Exactly.
That's all these other people's problem.
I'm still here, so
yeah. Hey, they might show up at my show and laugh, and then everything's fine.
Exactly.
Right? As long as they make it there.
Exactly. Well, we're gonna start wrapping up because I know you have to get going. I have the Art of Bombing. We'll wait to do that.
we talk about bombing. I like to go more positive towards the end. What has been one of your favorite gigs you've been able to do so far in your career?
Okay, so there's one that really stands out for me, and it's getting to be far back there now, so I'm feeling like I need another one. I need one to outdo it. But CJ Galvain's Wide Right show, Spicy Sets. That was by far the funnest comedy show I've done. I'm not exactly sure what it was. I can say that CJ is so easy to work with. He's so welcoming.
It is a fun show.
It's a fun show. It's a fun bar. I don't know if it's just everything downtown Denver. I mean, Comedy Works is the premier club everywhere. We all know that. But maybe as much as Comedy Works, and I give them all the credit, don't get me wrong, maybe it's just downtown Denver. People are just ready to flip and party there. Because, I mean, it was a Wednesday or Thursday night.
Thursday night.
April,
later,
Thursday,
yeah.
is it? And I could do no wrong at that show, man. And I just felt so free, like just no, and I wasn't drinking or anything. I usually drink afterwards, but just so I'll give him my best.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I was able to be a nut, almost like I was a drunk who was in his mode. And boy, I'd just love to have more of that.
That's fun. I did that show. I had fun, and I will have to say that the next day, I was in the worst shape. Like, I felt like I'd never had a hangover like I did from eating chicken wings. And I didn't drink because I had to drive. Like, I had maybe one beer the whole night that I was there, maybe two. But the next day, the worst hangover from eating chicken wings.
Wow.
That's how I know I'm in my 40s.
Yeah, that might be part of it. Otherwise, what are they putting in the wings? That brings questions.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I wish I would have done, as free as I was that night, I didn't want to go over on time, even though I ran myself a little short on my joke list, like you always do. And so, yeah, I jived with the audience a lot. We had a real connection. But I wish that I would have talked about... you can't really tell by looking at me right away, but I'm missing like 7 teeth because of some bad choices that I made when I was growing up. I'm an ex-addict, and I grew up drinking sugary sodas and stuff like that from a very early age. And so a lot of my teeth have fallen out. And it never dawned on me till I got on stage at Spicy Sets what a problem it was going to be.
Oh, no.
Because I drop a punchline, and while they're laughing, I reach back and grab a wing, and I'm like, shit. Oh, I know you didn't want me to curse much on here, sorry, bud. But
we made it pretty much the whole show without it, so that was pretty close.
We did it. We broke that rule early.
We have the Art of Bombing Get Pumped playlist. Doesn't have to be a song that gets you pumped for comedy, just a song that just gets you pumped. What's a song that gets you pumped?
Oh, man, it really depends on the moment, buddy. A song that gets me pumped is...
First one that comes to your head.
Well, I was listening to it yesterday while I was riding to the open mic. I guess I'll just put Mental Health by Quiet Riot. Although, that's a very older one. I listen to newer and older stuff, so just right now.
Funny thing, that album, that was the first cassette tape that I ever owned. It was I can't remember if it was for my birthday. I think it was Christmas, actually. It was a Christmas gift. I got that and Ray Charles Jr.'s Ghostbusters soundtrack.
Yeah, I had that.
Both in cassette.
I had on record.
And a boombox.
Yep.
That was a gift that I got when I turned 8 for my 8th birthday.
Nice.
Yeah.
That'd be right. I was 10, dude. Yeah, we're a couple years apart only. Yep. And I did have the Ray Parker Jr. on record, and I had a couple.
I have it on record now too.
Oh, yeah, collector's item, huh?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's a collector's item, but I was like, oh, this is cool, so I'm going to get it.
If it is to you, it is.
Exactly. That's all that matters. All right, well, this has been fantastic, Geoff. Where can people find you? Direct people to your social medias and where they can connect with you.
I mean, just look up Geoff Gundy on LinkedIn, and I don't know if, most people are probably listening as opposed to watching or whatnot, I think you said. So Geoff is spelled Geoff. Thank you, Mom.
Geoff with the G.
Yeah, Geoff Gundy, like it sounds. Gundy. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube.
All right.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thanks for doing this.
Dude, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Absolutely.
This has been a Dan Bublitz comedy production.